So what's up people, and welcome back to another Alita Battle Angel / GUNNM video. So before I start, I wanted to apologize for not bringing out a video for a while. What I wanted to do was to have 1 week of quiet time out of the respect for the people who passed away during that fire at Kyoto Animation Studios, and so I purposely didn't upload any videos for 1 week after that last video. So I want to apologize in advance for this, and thank you very much for your understanding. Okay, so Alita Battle Angel. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. Today's subject, of course, as you can see, is about Gonzu versus Nurse Gerhardt, which I'll come to later on. But there was a couple of things I also wanted to talk about first. First of all, I did want to talk about a video which I saw, which was very interesting, that was brought up by the YouTuber The Last 300. And it talked about how Keanu Reeves was perfect for the role of Figure 4. And it was very interesting. I'll pat myself in the back that I agreed with him, and I thought I said the same thing. Although, you know, in my last video, I also said that S-Stock might be good for him. And I've also mentioned in comments that, you know, Radio Chaos might be good for Keanu Reeves. So maybe my choice wasn't particularly strong. However, the reason I wanted to bring out and suggest for you to watch that video is he talks about not only Keanu Reeves, but about, of course, his most recent roles in John Wick. And he brought about a very interesting parallel comparison between how Alita's life goes and how John Wick's life goes, and that both are very much tragic heroes who have to go through the fighting of society and basically the tenacity to get through everything, rather than the typical good versus evil sort of situation. In both cases, life is basically giving them a really tough time, and their fight is not just against some single antagonist, but against the overall life itself. And so I thought that that was a very interesting comparison of the two movies. So anyway, I'll leave a link to that particular video. And if you have a chance, and if you haven't looked at it, yeah, go take a look at it. I thought it was pretty good anyway. Okay, so moving on to the main topic of Gonzu versus Nurse Gerhardt. Now, this was a topic that was suggested by Pablo Navarro. And after his suggestion, I definitely agreed with him that this is a very interesting topic. So first of all, thank you very much, Pablo, for this suggestion. And second of all, the reason why I find that this is quite interesting is that I think this role is a very unique role. This is a role which I will call a role of contradiction. And the reason why I say that is twofold. First of all, with regards to the role itself, it's not really a significant, prominent role in either the movie or the comic. Neither Gonzu nor Nurse Gerhardt have any prominent role or really strong position in the story itself. And this is especially true for Nurse Gerhardt in the movie, considering the fact that she really doesn't have any lines to say in the movie. And yet I call it a contradiction because of the fact that after the movie is done, or after the comic is done, both Nurse Gerhardt and Gonzu somewhat remains in your memory for a very strong kind of position, considering the fact that the role itself was relatively minor. You remember that character well. And the other reason why I call it a contradiction is what you see in the photo here. Gonzu is definitely not Nurse Gerhardt just look at them. You could tell, right? Nurse Gerhardt is a very attractive lady, and Gonzu is this kind of the old, quiet gentleman. And you couldn't have so much of a difference as far as appearance is concerned. And the other is that, of course, even the role, Gonzu is more kind of a older gentleman friend to Doc Ido, and Nurse Gerhardt is, of course, the assistant. And so they play a very significant different role, and they have a very significantly different persona. And yet, I call this a contradiction again because they play a very similar point, or I guess a role again, in the movie or the story. In that both characters play somewhat emotional anchor to the role of Dr. Ido, whether that's Daisuke Ido or Dyson Ido. So, of course, Gonzu is a veterinarian. I can't remember if he's a cyber veterinarian or just a veterinarian, but he is this old friend of Doc Ido. Old, I guess I would mean more age than length of time. They haven't really been friends for a long time, but Gonzu has always played a very strong role in supporting Daisuke Ido. When Daisuke Ido was kind of evicted from his, I guess it was his girlfriend at that time's apartment. Of course, don't feel so angry about that. Dr. Ido had a girlfriend because of the fact that Daisuke Ido was never married. So in this case, I think it was a living partner or a girlfriend, but he gets evicted. And at that time, it was due to him discovering and meeting with Carol, in the story Holy Night. And at that time, of course, he meets with Gonzu. Gonzu takes the two of them in, and it becomes a very strong friendship. Whereas, of course, with Nurse Gerhardt, it's after Chiren leaves Dyson Ido. This is what you find out from the prequel novel, Iron City, that Nurse Gerhardt is hired because of the fact that, of course, once Chiren leaves, Doc Ido can't do everything, and he eventually needs someone to help him, despite the fact that he is kind of living hand to mouth with regards to funds. And of course, it turns out that that was all for the better because of the fact that there are several dramatic incidents that happen in the novel where Dyson Ido can't treat patients for a while. And due to Nurse Gerhardt's really strong nursing experience, Doc Ido doesn't have to. And in fact, one of the big patients that Nurse Gerhardt has in that novel is Doc Ido himself after his incidents as a bounty hunter, So Nurse Gerhardt also plays a very important role in making sure that Doc Ido can somewhat survive through this entire mess, similar to the way Gonzu was, although in a different manner. And then, of course, once they get to know each other, let's go back to Gonzu and Daisuke Ido again. Then Gonzu always plays this person who's kind of at the back, always helping out with Doc Ido, mostly as a friend because he's never a servant. He isn't a servant after all, but a close friend, and he always is happy to go out of his way to help with Doc Ido's problems, But he never really comes out from that support role. He doesn't try to order Doc Ido around or try to say this is what you should be doing. Instead, he does it from a support. Whatever you decide, Daisuke Ido, I will always be there to help you. And sometimes that help became really crucial. For example, that time in the comic, which is different from the movie, when they first fought Makaku, which is of course Gruishka in the movie, Daisuke Ido gets significantly hurt. And Alita also is basically ripped apart. And so while trying to carry Alita back, Daisuke Ido blacks out. Luckily, he phones Gonzu before he blacks out, and it's Gonzu who rescues both of them and makes sure that they're safe again. So Gonzu kind of always stays in the shadow, but always is there for Doc Ido. And as we look in the movie as well as the prequel novel, Nurse Gerhardt seems to have a similar role. Whenever it's a situation where Dyson Ido needs to do something, such as a covert operation in his bounty hunter side, then he goes out into the night to do things. And although Nurse Gerhardt is extremely worried, because that's what Nurse Gerhardt's personality is, she never challenges Doc Ido. What she does instead is support Doc Ido in the sense that if any patients are scheduled around that time, she will always take care of the patients. And of course, later on when Doc Ido, Dyson Ido, becomes significantly injured due to the incidents that happened in the Iron City prequel novel, it's Nurse Gerhardt that nurses him back to health again. And so if you think about it, if you look at the movie, Nurse Gerhardt is even further in the shadows than Gonzu. At least Gonzu got a chance to talk a few times. Nurse Gerhardt got barely any lines in the movie. Luckily in the novel, Nurse Gerhardt talks a lot. She's like, Doc, you gotta do something with your life because you're gonna die if you keep on doing things like this. And she gives very strong kind of sisterly advice, or maybe even motherly advice, although Doc Ido's much older than her, as somebody who's a sympathetic person who's worried about the things that Doc Ido does, but never criticizes him for doing so. And of course, in the movie, she barely says anything. But what I liked about this role and the actress who portrayed her, I think her name was Idara Vector. Oops, no, that's not right. Idara Victor. I'm getting the role of Vector mixed up with the names. I apologize, Miss Victor. The thing I liked about Idara Victor is, considering the fact that she was completely handicapped with not being able to say anything, she was muted out of being able to make a presence, she was able to do so through the kind of the facial expressions and the body movement that she did. She was, one thing that I think a lot of people can agree upon is, despite not having any lines, she was able to show an expression of extreme sympathy, concern and care for both Dyson Ido as well as Alita in the movie. And I have to admit, you have to be a pretty darn good actress to be able to portray your own role while being handicapped, to be able to say nothing during that entire film. Yeah, she had a few lines, but nothing to be able to give the audience any sense of personality, and yet she was able to bring it out through the facial expressions that came out. Now, part of that may be the director, and if that's the case, Good for you, Robert Rodriguez, but you have to give credit to the actress. I mean, there are some actors out there who can't show any sort of personality, even if they had hundreds of lines. And here's an actress who was able to show a tremendous amount of personality with having no lines. So, yeah, that was a very good job. And the portrayal and the character that she gave was exactly the personality that you would expect Nurse Gerhardt to be if it was the character that also was in the novel. And if you knew the personality of Gonzu, you also say that, yeah, Nurse Gerhardt is definitely successfully showing a parallel role for Dyson Ido, which Gonzu gave for Daisuke Ido, and that both of them are emotional anchors for their close friend. Now, knowing how the comic story moves along and hoping that the movie sequel will be faithful to what's coming up next, I keep on saying the Japan arc, and yeah, I mean it that way, then I would expect that Nurse Gerhardt will be coming back knowing, Gonzu's role in that story. And my only hope is, and my only request is, please give her some lines. I bet she would be able to express even a greater amount of persona if she was allowed to talk, rather than just give the facial and body expressions. I still can't figure out why the director didn't give her any more prominent lines. I mean, it wasn't going to add a tremendous amount of time. And it would have been nice to see that persona. And the way I see it is there are other stories where they, the really not so significant role in terms of the amount of time they have on screen still plays a strong role in the story. Probably the biggest one I could think of is Alfred in the Batman series, right? Alfred never really has a strong role, and considering he's a butler, he never really makes a really significant, presence in any of the stories, and yet people always care for Alfred. There are others like Q from James Bond. There's a few of those types of roles where you always kind of like that person. Moneypenny is another one from James Bond, right? And so, yeah, I hope Nurse Gerhardt comes out again. And I hope they give her a present that's more appropriate to that specific role. At least give her some lines. And to be honest, considering the fact that she is the emotional anchor to Dyson Ido, she should be one that gives out some very important emotional lines. They may not be large in the number of lines she has, but they should be important in the types of lines that they have. That's one of the reasons why, for example, Alfred is so prominent, because he doesn't often get a chance to talk, but whenever he does, he often says things that are very sentimental, and you're like, wow, I'm glad that he said that sort of thing. And so I hope they give Nurse Gerhardt those sorts of lines as well. They don't have to be philosophically deep, but they should at least be respectful of the character that she is, which is a very kind and caring persona. And if that's the case, then I would be very happy with the Nurse Gerhardt role that she plays. And I also would be very satisfied knowing that the Nurse Gerhardt role is replacing the Gonzu role from the comic. Okay, well, that's about it for this video. So yeah, what do you think with regards to Nurse Gerhardt if you saw the movie? And if you read both the comic and watched the movie, how do you feel with regards to how Nurse Gerhardt is portraying the role versus how Gonzu portrayed the role? And would you like to see Nurse Gerhardt come out again in the next sequel? And if she does, how would you like to see her portrayed? Anyway, I thank you very much for your comments, because as always, I really like your comments. And so, yeah, keep them coming. And I'll continue to make more Alita Battle Angel / GUNNM videos in the future. I hope you join us at that time. So until the next time, thank you very much for watching. Happy DVD watching, happy video watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.